This is a brief history of the White Pass and Yukon Route Railroad. Over 10,000 years ago, long before the white man invaded this area of southeastern Alaska, ancestors of the Tlingit tribe crossed the Bering Strait and settled in this portion of southeast Alaska along the shoreline in what is today Skagway and Dyea. The Tlingits were keenly aware of how to traverse the narrow and steep canyons in order to carry out an active trade both north and south of their positions. However, the relatively peaceful existence of the Tlingit nation was soon to be altered forever. Alaska was purchased from Russia in 1867, making it a U.S. territory that was virtually unexplored. Then there was the Panic of 1893, which was part of a worldwide collapse in trade and depression. In the United States, the exchange of silver for gold under the Sherman Silver Act caused depletion of the Treasury gold stores. And finally, the discovery of gold in the Klondike area of Canada set up a gold stampede. On August 16, 1896, George Washington Carmack, along with his Native American wife Kate, her brother Skookum Jim, and nephew Dawson Charlie, found a large deposit of gold along a tributary of the Klondike River. Soon the word about gold spread locally, and in a few months, the Carmack group, as well as miners who had been in the area for several years, filed on the best claims in the area. The news of the gold strike did not reach the lower 48 states until the following year, in July of 1897. This was because once winter set in, there was no ship or other traffic out of the Yukon. For the remainder of 1897 and on through 1898, anxious gold seekers booked passage on any ship heading to the Alaska gold fields. During the harsh winter of 1897 through 1898, the struggles faced by these men has been immortalized in the photographs showing them slowly making their way through the deep snow up the Chilkoot Trail to reach the pass at the summit. By Canadian law, any person wishing to reach the goldfield had to have in his possession at least 1 ton of supplies so that they could last the winter without starving and without undergoing any more undue hardship, and also so that the Canadian government would not be tasked with bailing hungry, starving, cold gold seekers out at Canadian expense. Once these men got to the top of Chilkoot Pass, they had to wait out the winter because the Yukon River was frozen over. During this time, they built small boats or rafts in order to float their equipment down the Yukon River for approximately 500 miles in order to get to the gold fields in the following spring. Captain William Moore, a former steamboat operator and gold prospector, was a member of the 1887 Canadian Survey Party, which was commissioned to establish the 141st meridian, which was the U.S. Canadian border. The Canadians were anxious to establish this border because of all of the activity surrounding the new discoveries of gold. While on this survey, they were also to explore the advantages of the Chilkoot Pass. In doing so, Moore learned from his Native American friend, Skookum Jim, as well as other members of the First Nation, that there was another pass nearby that might be easier to traverse and might hold some benefit in the future in terms of a gold rush. Moore obtained permission to explore the other trail, and after doing so, felt that due to its more gradual elevation and the summit being 600 feet lower than that of the Chilkoot Trail, that this pass, later becoming White Pass, was as good as, if not better than, the Chilkoot Trail. Moore concluded that if and when there was a major Yukon gold strike, a profit could be made by someone who controlled access to this pathway to the gold fields. He then staked out a 160-acre homestead claim in October of 1897. He and his son Ben would return each year and make improvements on the property, which included the primitive cabin, which still exists today, Ben's house near the cabin, a wharf, a sawmill, and of course, a primitive trail through the White Pass Canyon. The second White Pass Trail, more commonly called the Trail of 98, was constructed by George Brackett. He was a prominent businessman and a one-time mayor of Minneapolis, Minnesota, who was prosperous until the Panic of 1893, during which time he suffered several financial setbacks. Like thousands of others seeking to rebuild their fortunes, he looked to the Yukon gold rush as a remedy. He went to Skagway in August of 1897 and met up with potential business partners who convinced him that the White Pass Trail, rather than the Chilkoot route, would be the better choice. The idea was to construct a road that could be passed either by pack animals or by small wagons pulled by animals. He began construction in November of 1897, and by March of 1898 the road was opened, and the collection of tolls began. The last few miles of the road, however, narrowed to a treacherous footpath, so that packers, individual people hauling supplies, were still needed. However, this path was fraught with danger as it gained in elevation. In wet weather, it would turn into a slippery, muddy bog, and during the winter, snow and ice caused similar problems. Several men fell to their deaths, but even more tragic were the deaths of over 3,000 abused pack horses that perished in the canyon, which later became known as Dead Horse Gulch. The toll road did well for about 1 year, but by the spring of 1899, the railroad had reached the White Pass summit and essentially put the Brackett Road out of business. Fortunately, Brackett was able to sell his wagon road to the White Pass Railroad Company, which allowed him to pay all of his creditors and realize a reasonable profit. In the meantime, a British investment company, the Close Brothers, under the company name of White Pass and Yukon Railroad Company, obtained the rights to build a railroad from Skagway through the White Pass and on into Canada as far as Whitehorse. After purchasing the Bracket Road in order to get supplies to varying points along the White Pass, work began on 28 May 1898. This company was supported by strong financial backing and an experienced contractor by the name of John Henney. They encountered numerous obstacles along the way, having to blast their way through solid granite mountainsides, building many trestle bridges across streams, and even blasting a tunnel through one of the hillsides. However, they achieved the impossible and reached the White Pass summit by 20 February 1899. The remainder of the route was completed on July 29, 1900, at which point a golden spike ceremony was held on the shores of Lake Bennett, thus joining all the links in this magnificent railroad endeavor. Now it's time for a ride on the train. Most of the passengers that ride the train come from the many cruise ships that are docked in Skagway. The most common train ride is the 2.5-hour trip to the White Pass summit and back. The other is the longer ride to Fraser, British Columbia, where one then gets off the train and takes a private bus down the Alaska Highway back to Skagway. The White Pass Summit train trip does not require a passport because the train only goes to the Canadian-US border and then it returns via a wide loop that was just recently constructed at the end of 2018. The Fraser trip does require a U.S. passport, since once you reach Fraser, you have to actually get off the train on Canadian soil and board the bus that takes you back to Skagway. There are 79 passenger cars in the White Pass inventory. The cars having an average age of 44 years. Each car can carry anywhere from 35 to 45 passengers. Each car has a restroom, comfortable bench type seating, and large windows for viewing. The oldest car in the inventory is the Lake Emerald, which was first put into service in 1883. So if you happen to be placed on this particular passenger car, you will not only be viewing fantastic scenery, but you will also be riding in a part of history. All aboard! See ya.
No problem.
Well,
Well, we'll wait for them. There's just stragglers, I'm sure. I actually don't even know. What time is it? 41. About not doing the safety for like the first 20 minutes of the ride, or 10 or 5 or whatever. On the left will be an old steam engine. This is really cool. This used to be over on its side, and one of our conductors started tinkering with it, and the city found out and they funded the project, so now people, and like especially kids, can go and climb around the train. This steam engine was used during World War II. And it was used to haul freight. They actually had 17 trains going on the tracks in a day, hauling supplies up to Canada. And they built the Alaska-Canadian Highway to help defend Alaska. It's going to have a defense system, and the Aleutian Islands would be bombed. So yeah, now the Alaska-Canadian Highway was built because of our train tracks. Your name? It's open 23 hours a day with men and women constantly working long shifts to keep everything operating. We have 21 diesel electric engines that we've acquired from all over. And we have 2 steam engines. This is not beer. Somebody told me it looked like beer. This is like green tea from this morning that not drinking. But anyways, we have 2 steam engines. The number 73 will be working this year, but they both have been in the shops for quite a while, getting their engines overhauled. And then we have 87 passenger coach cars, and only 2 of those are luxury cars. And the oldest train cars, like coach cars that we have that carry passengers, is from 1881. So before the gold rush even began. We keep them refurbished, looking somewhat vintage, to like continue to kind of tell the history. This one was built in 2014, and I believe 2015 was the first year luxury started. And we are just cruising. We got a higher speed limit through here, so now we can cruise on out and get to the good stuff. I'll tell you real quick though about the cemetery that you'll see on the right, and then I'll start pouring your drinks. essentially, long story short, gold was found. People came up here to try to get close to it. There was no law and order, like many frontier towns. Soapy Smith was a gangster and a really good conman that started a gang up here and performed scams on everyone. And they wouldn't know many times that they had been scammed till they were up the pass. Like, sometimes he would get to know somebody and then come up to them, well, not him, he would send one of his gang members to get to know someone, and then later he would come running up to him saying, hey, I just got a telegram from your wife so-and-so and your daughter so-and-so is sick, they need money, they said if you just could send it, it could work out, and I've got these telegraph poles. So Skagway in the winter time is about 500, probably about 600 to 900 people that stay around. And in the summertime, there's about 2,500 to 3,000 people. So quite an influx of seasonal workers. It was like the epitome of the small town. And then he ended up being the highest test scores in the state of Alaska. They get a lot of overtime with their teachers, and they get it's a train going into the first tunnel, second tunnel. And then on the right will be the headwaters of the Skagway River. And on the left will be the river going down towards Bridge. So really pretty on both sides.